Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj srimadbhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Canto 3, titled Status Quo, Chapter 23, Activities of Kapila, Text 10. No, Text 9. And 10. We'll read today. Maitreya Vacha.
Maitreya Vacha.
Idito Bhagavan Evam.
Idito Bhagavan Evam.
Kapilakya Parapuman.
Kapilakya Parapuman.
Vacha Viklavayetyah.
Vacha Viklavayetyah.
Mataram Matruvatsavaha.
Mataram Matruvatsavaha.
Maitreya Vacha.
Maitreya Vacha.
Idito Bhagavan Evam.
Idito Bhagavan Evam.
Kapilakya Parapuman.
Kapilakya Parapuman.
Vacha Viklavayetyah.
Vacha Viklavayetyah.
Mataram Matruvatsavaha.
Mataram Matruvatsavaha.
Maitreya Vacha.
Maitreya Vacha.
Idito Bhagavan Evam.
Idito Bhagavan Evam.
Kapilakya Parapuman.
Kapilakya Parapuman.
Vacha Viklavayetyah.
Vacha Viklavayetyah.
Mataram Matruvatsavaha.
Mataram Matruvatsavaha. Maitreya Vacha. Maitreya Vacha. Idito Bhagavan Evam. Idito Bhagavan Evam. Kapilakya Parapuman. Kapilakya Parapuman. Vacha Viklavayetyah. Vacha Viklavayetyah. Mataram Matruvatsavaha. Mataram Matruvatsavaha. Maitreya Vacha. Maitreya Vacha. Idito Bhagavan Evam. Idito Bhagavan Evam. Kapilakya Parapuman. Kapilakya Parapuman. Vacha Viklavayetyah. Vacha Viklavayetyah. Mataram Matruvatsavaha. Mataram Matruvatsavaha.
Maitreya Vacha.
Maitreya Vacha.
Idito Bhagavan Evam.
Idito Bhagavan Evam.
Kapilakya Parapuman.
Kapilakya Paraguna
Vacha Vikapya Ityaha
Vacha Vikapya
Matara Matrivatsalaha
Matara Matrivatsalaha
Maitreya Vacha
Maitreya Vacha
Idito Bhagavanevam
Idito Bhagavanevam
Kapilakya Parapaman
Kapilakya Paraguman
Vacha Viklavayityaha
Vacha Viklavayityaha
Mataram Matrivatsalaha
Mataram Matrivatsalaha. That's it.
Okay. Maitreya Vacha.
Maitreya Vacha
Maitreya said,
Maitreya said
Iditaha,
Iditaha
praised.
Praise
Bhagavan,
Bhagavan
the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Supreme Personality of Godhead
Evam,
Evam
thus.
Das
Kapila Akyaha,
Kalima Akyara
named Kapila.
Named Kapila
Paraha,
Paraha
supreme.
Supreme
Uman,
Uman,
person.
Person
Vacha,
Vacha
with words.
with words
Avi, Plavaya, grave.
Great
Iti,
Iti
thus.
Thus
Aha,
Aha
replied.
replied
Mataram,
Mataram
to his mother.
to his mother
Matrivatsalaha,
Matrivatsalaha
very affectionate to his mother.
very affectionate to his mother.
Translation. Thus the Supreme Personality of Godhead Kapila, satisfied by the words of his mother, towards him who was very affectionate, replied with gravity. Purport. Since the Lord is all perfect, his exhibition of affection for his mother was also complete. After hearing the words of his mother, he most respectfully, with due gravity and good manners, replied. Read the next verse, Prabhu. Vacha marga nanena matas te susiv yenoditena me astitena param kashtam achirad ava wrote Yasi. Personality of God had said, my dear mother, the path of self-realization which I have already instructed to you is very easy. You can execute this system without difficulty, and by following it you shall very soon be liberated, even within your present body. Purport. Devotional service is so perfect that simply by following the rules and regulations and executing them under the direction of the spiritual master, one is liberated. As it is said herein, from the clutches of Maya, even in this body. In other yogic processes or in empiric philosophical speculation, one is never certain whether or not he is at the perfectional stage. But in the discharge of devotional service, if one has unflinching faith in the instruction of the bona fide spiritual master and follows the rules and regulations, he is sure to be liberated, even within this present body. Srila Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu has also confirmed this. Iha yasya harer dasye. Regardless of where he is situated, anyone whose only aim is to serve the Supreme Lord under the direction of the spiritual master is called Jivan Mukta, or one who is liberated even with his material body. Sometimes doubts arise in the minds of neophytes about whether or not the spiritual master is liberated. Sometimes neophytes are doubtful about the bodily affairs of the spiritual master. The point of liberation, however, is not to see the bodily symptoms of the spiritual master. One has to see the spiritual symptoms of the spiritual master. Jivan Mukta means that even though one is in the material body, there are still some material necessities since the body is material. Because one is fully situated in the service of the Lord, he should be understood to be liberated. Liberation entails being situated in one's own position. That is the definition in the srimadbhagavatam. Muktir Surupena Vivastitaha. The Sarup, or actual identity of the living entity, is described by Lord Chaitanya. Jivar Surupoi Krishna Nityadas. The real identity of the living entity is that he is eternally a servitor of the Supreme Lord. If someone is 100% engaged in the service of the Lord, he is to be understood as liberated. One must understand whether or not he is liberated by his activities and devotional service, not by other symptoms. Oh my God, Divinandas. Sirganjana Shimakaya Chakshurandasana Tasma Shigave Mukamkaya Chalambanamkaya Tegami Kripatam Mande Shigrunditara Vancha Kapurvisha Kivasinavivacha Patitanam Bhavani Bila Vaishnavi Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasana Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hear the translations again. Thus the Supreme Personality of Godhead Kapila, satisfied by the words of his mother, towards whom he was very affectionate, replied with gravity. The Personality of Godhead said, "My dear mother, the path of self-realization which I have already instructed you is very easy. You can execute this system without difficulty. By following it, you shall very soon be liberated, even within your present body." So Bhakti Swarup Chaitanya Swami, he stayed in Laguna Beach last night. We thought he was going to give Bhagavatam class today and tomorrow, but looks like he'll just give tomorrow. So when we hear, or when we read in the Bhagavatam, and hearing the Bhagavatam, we should keep in mind that the instructions are actually specifically for us. These are all meant for us. So in other words, it's, okay, Kapila, he's speaking to his mother, but in many ways he's also speaking to us too. That the path of self-realization, which I've already instructed to you, is very easy. So he's saying it to us, right? And you can execute this system without difficulty. And by following it, you shall very soon be liberated, even within your present body. So we should take it as he's also speaking to us. So when we hear this, oh, it's very easy, right? So, and, right, you can execute the system without any difficulty. Sometimes people think, oh, well, what is this? You know, what is Kapila saying here? Is it? I mean, because in other words, devotees have experienced that sometimes it's not so easy, and sometimes there is difficulty. So of course, Srila Prabhupada said, in relation to that, he would say that it's very easy and simple. It's very simple and easy for somebody who's sincere. That's what he would say. So for someone who is sincere, it's very easy. It's very simple. But for someone who's on some degree lacking that sincerity, then it could be very difficult and very troublesome and like that, and not easy. So then we may say, okay, hey, well, I kind of feel like I'm in the category of somebody who's insincere because I experience difficulties all the time and it doesn't seem easy for me all the time. Well, okay, fine. There may be some insincerity within us. Practically, it's within everybody in Kali Yuga. Some insincerities there. But the point is, we should take that as that, okay, well, I should become sincere. I should become sincere in relation to Krishna conscious, practicing Krishna conscious, and then it will be easy and simple and free of difficulty. Because after all, when something's easy and free of difficulty, it means that it's natural for the person. So, for example, it's very easy and not very difficult for an alcoholic to go to a local bar and buy some alcohol. It's very it's natural. Or it's very easy for a teacher to teach some subject. Whereas for somebody else who's not an alcoholic, it's very difficult for them to go and do that because that's not their nature. They don't want to do that. Similarly with teaching, for somebody who's not a teacher to teach is very difficult. So the point that's being brought up is that we should try to come in. We should try to align ourselves with our true nature, which is, as Prabhupada points out in the purport, Jiva Srupabhai Krishna and Nityadas, we're eternal servants of Krishna. But of course, if someone's in a diseased condition, then what should be natural is not natural. Just like for somebody who is overweight, or whatever word you want to say, it actually should be easy to take a walk, right? Because humans should be able to walk. Humans should be able to exercise. But because they're in a diseased state, it's not easy. It should be easy for human beings to rise early in the morning, for example. But because they are affected by lower modes, it's difficult. And so on and so on and so on, like that. So it should be easy for someone not to be forced to go to a casino and spend all their money, right? Sometimes you hear these horror stories of these people, they get all their retirement money, and then they go completely, squander it? They squander it at a local casino, and then afterwards they commit suicide. These are some horror stories. But it should be easy for someone to refrain from going to a casino and squander their money. But because they're in a diseased state, they're forced to do it. It's a diseased state. And a lot of this is just the propaganda of, modern, materialistic, actually demoniac propaganda. They make something that's actually demoniac and sick to be something that everybody should want. Like to go waste their time in a casino. They try to put that up. Oh, it's so great. But really, it's just a waste of time. Like we were driving yesterday, Jagannath Tirtha and myself, and we're on the freeway. We look and there's a billboard here. There's a billboard on the freeway, and it was advertising some casino. And there was a guy, and he had a cigar in his mouth, and he was lighting the cigar with like a big bill. Like the bill was on fire, the $100 bill was on fire, and he was lighting a cigar. And I was thinking, and they're trying to get people to go to the casino. And I was thinking, what are they trying to advertise here? Because, and what the first thing I thought was that, oh, you go to a casino and you just it's like light your money on fire, And anyway, somehow or other that would attract people. Oh, that guy's so cool, he's got a $100 bill on fire and he's lighting a cigar,
He's made so much money that he can do.
Oh, okay. He's made so much money that he's just able to light the $100 bill on fire. Right? But I was thinking, yeah, you just go in there to burn the money. Right? And I told Jagannath Tirtha that, and then Jagannath Tirtha told me, he said his friend used to work at a casino. And he's, if you work somewhere, you kind of see all the suffering that goes on there. If you're a little conscious, you see the suffering. So there was a woman there, and she was, playing the machine or whatever, and then she won, right? The 3 cherries or whatever. Oh, big amount of money. But she still looked depressed. And then Jagannath Tirtha's friend went up to her and said, "Hey, what's wrong with you? You just won all this money, whatever, $10,000, $20,000. You just won all this money. Why are you happy?" And she goes, "Well, this, me winning this money, this just brings me up to the point where I actually started, because I lost so much money already. I already lost thousands of dollars, so this is just bringing me up to like 0 point or whatever.
Break even.
What is it? Breaking even, yeah. It's like devotees, sometimes they go on catering, to big festival, and you spend all the money on the boga and the gas and everything, and the whole idea is, you make a little Lakshmi for whatever, their maintenance or Krishna or whatever you're, both. But when they break even, it's just you spent all that time and, you didn't get what you wanted. So anyway, she was depressed about that.
The real depression is that she knows that she's compelled to keep gambling and she's going to lose.
Yeah, she's compelled to keep on going. So yeah, I mean, Krishna consciousness is natural, and it is easy, and it is free from difficulties. But we have to come to a state where our disease of not being Krishna conscious and everything being natural and difficult in Krishna consciousness, that has to go away, which is gradual. But of course, we shouldn't make it too gradual. It's like, oh, gradual, you know. Some people say, oh yeah, I'll become Krishna conscious when I'm done with my university studies, right? I'll become Krishna conscious when my kids are grown up and they go to college. I'll become Krishna conscious when I retire, right? And they just keep on putting it off and off and off, and then that's it, And then the time of death comes, and then they don't pass the test, right? Because that's the whole Vedic version. It's Anta Narayana Smritihi, that the test, by the way, of all of our sadhana, is that at the time of death we're able to remember Krishna. That's the test. So if you want to know what the test is, that's the test. That we have to remember Krishna. So that means all of our japa, all of our bowing down, everything we're doing, we're preparing our minds so we can remember Krishna. And why do we want to remember Krishna at the time of death? Because Krishna wants us to. Krishna wants us to go back to the spiritual world. And also devotees, they want to go back to the spiritual world. And Krishna says one who remembers him, right? Anta, what is it?
Ante Narayana Smriti.
But Anta Kale Chamameva Smaram Kalevaram. That whoever remembers me at the time of death, they don't get another, that's Janma Karma Chamadivyam, they don't get another material body, they go to the spiritual world. So yes, and Rupa Goswami, he gives a prescription for us, and that is stated in the Nectar of Instruction. I think it's, 5th or 6th verse, where he says that the holy name of Krishna is sweet, just like sugar candy. But those who have the disease of jaundice, they cannot taste the sweetness, it tastes bitter. But by engaging their tongue in chanting in a regulated way every day, fixed amount, then gradually that disease will go away and one will realize the sweetness of Krishna's name. So the disease goes away. And then it's natural, chanting japa. The mind is just, it's naturally flowing to Krishna. Not that it's like fighting it. Hare Krishna, and then the mind just like running away from the holy name. It's like if you have a friend and you have a friend that you haven't seen for a while, right? And usually when friends haven't seen each other for a while, usually when friends have not seen each other for a while, then what do? They go up and they embrace each other. Oh, nice to see you, and like that. So it's like we have a friend, right, the supreme friend Krishna. Instead of embracing him, namely embracing the holy name, sometimes it's like we see our friend, we like, run the other way, like he's our punisher or something, like he's coming to punish us. So the idea is we want to embrace Krishna, or embrace Krishna's names, and that we want to be natural, and that comes from, as Rupa Goswami says, every day chanting in a serious, sincere, careful way, and then that disease will go away. And aside from that is that, or in addition to that, is that the chanting of Hare Krishna and all the other processes, they really come to life when they're done in association with other Vaishnavas. They really, not specifically more advanced Vaishnavas, they really like come to life. What was it? The chanting. Oh yeah, Tirtha Maharaj was telling me some years ago, he was saying that my spiritual master, his name is Guru Swami, he was giving a Bhagavad Gita lecture, and Tirtha Maharaj was in the audience. And Tirtha Maharaj he told me later, he said, it was a very straightforward, simple philosophical presentation on Bhagavad Gita. But Tirtha Maharaj was telling me that while he was in association of His Holiness Giraj Swami in that talk, Tirtha Maharaj was being inspired by His Holiness Giraj Swami in the sense that Giraj Swami was helping Tirtha Maharaj realize that Krishna consciousness is very easy and simple. In other words, that His Holiness Giraj Swami made Krishna consciousness seem very natural and easy and simple. Like, hey, anybody could do it. Hey, like that. In other words, it's not a difficult thing. But that is in association with advanced devotees. Because for advanced devotees, it is not a difficult thing. It's natural. So also, my spiritual master he said he was in the Yamuna River in Vrindavan many years ago. And sometimes what devotees do in the Yamuna River is they chant on their Gayatri thread, or their Brahman thread. They chant their Gayatri mantras, right? So he was chanting there around probably noontime, and Bibi Govindaswamy was next to him, and Bibi Govindaswamy was also chanting his Gayatri. So my spiritual master was saying that he was remembering that was very powerful. That was like super powerful Gayatri, just like super focused, concentrated. He's feeling the mercy coming down. So he was chanting and he was feeling that. But then all this, and his eyes were closed. But then all of a sudden, his meditation more or less broke, and he like the mercy kind of like cut off, and like that. And then he was wondering, oh, what happened? And then he looked over. He opened his eyes and he looked over, and he saw that Bibi Govindaswamy was walking out of the Yamuna River. So then he gleaned from that is that by the association of Bibi Govindaswamy, he was feeling the mercy coming down, and the concentration, all that. And then when he left, he broke. So that's an interesting point, that whether it's kirtan, japa, reading, all of these different activities, if they're done with sincere, serious devotees, then it's that much more powerful. So we should always try to get the association when we can, because sometimes things happen. Devotees move away. Devotees go back to Godhead. Devotees move out of the state. Whatever. So many things happen. Where we could lose the opportunity to have their association, and then it becomes very easy. And also, as Prabhupada says, that we, in the purport, we have to have unflinching faith in the instruction of the spiritual master. In the instruction of the bona fide spiritual master, if one has unflinching faith in the instruction of the bona fide spiritual master and follows the rules and regulations, he is sure to be liberated, even within this present body. So does anyone feel liberated? Sometimes?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay. Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes we have that experience where we feel, and sometimes we don't. But whatever the case, in the srimadbhagavatam, the 10th canto, Lord Brahma, he has a prayer that, how does that go? Te nukampam sushamikshimana, that, how does that go, the English?
I don't know the English by heart, but that's,
or the essence of it.
Yeah. One should always expect the mercy of the Lord and see that any difficulties that arise are due to one's previous karma, and at the same time continue to serve the Lord humbly, bowing down with body, word, and mind. In this way, one assures oneself to go back to God.
Yeah. Well, whatever suffering we're undergoing, we should think that, not that, hey, why do I deserve this? right? I don't deserve this. I'm too better. I'm too good for this, you know. And hey, God, why are you doing this to me? But we should think that, hey, I deserve this. Not only do I deserve this, I actually deserve worse because I'm such a rascal. But Krishna is so merciful that he is minimizing the suffering that I am supposed to get. He's actually minimizing it. And so we're seeing the suffering in the proper way. And then it's not that while we're suffering, we're okay, I'm going to give up Krishna consciousness, I'm going to give up serving Krishna. No, I'm going to continue serving Krishna with great faith, bowing down to Krishna, serving Krishna, not giving up my service mood while still suffering. And in this mood, it says that if someone has this mood, then they are, the kingdom of God or the spiritual world is their rightful claim. In other words, they inherit the kingdom of God. They go back to Godhead. The one who has that mood. And as our previous teachers, acharyas, explained, and Prabhupada, quoting them, he also explains that the qualification of one who, like a son, for example, the qualification of a son to inherit their father's property, right? The father's property, their only qualification practically is just to remain what? Alive. Because if you're alive, you'll inherit it. If you're dead, you won't. You can't. So if we're alive, so the example, if we're alive, then we inherit it. What does that mean? To stay alive in Krishna consciousness means to chant and hear and all these, to stay following the rules and regulations. That's what it means to remain alive. So if we remain alive, we'll inherit it. And part of remaining alive means following that, what was instructing us to do. And in that way, yes, we are liberated. It's just, yeah, we are. And in terms of the spiritual master...
Liberated in what way?
Well, liberated in the sense that... in the sense that we are for sure going back to Godhead.
But the point's being made now instead of the later.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm asking.
Liberated now, we're liberated as long as we are... I mean, this whole topic of liberation and, you know, devotee being liberated. I mean, it's like if you see, it says if you see Lord Jagannath, right, on the Rath Yatra cart, then you're all your sinful reaction gone. You're right. If you die right there, you probably go back to Godhead, right? Go back to Godhead. But the whole problem is that, you know, we fall back into sin, our sinful ways, our sinful mentality. Like if someone's in the kirtan, you know, they're chanting and dancing in kirtan, you know, and they're absorbed in Krishna. They're getting the mercy of Krishna. So you could say, yeah, that's a state of liberation. But then, whatever, they walk outside, and if it's usually young men, or sometimes have problems, right? They see a young, attractive woman, and then, you know, or whatever, like a Jamil in the Bhagavatam, he falls down in the association of women. I mean, you could say that his activities, while he was in good standing, it was on the platform of liberation. He was liberated. But because we have a tendency to fall down, then, yeah. So, I mean, yes.
Well, it's always good to go back to the definition from Bhagavatam. You know?
Thank you.
So, which means mukti is defined as giving up one's identification with any other form except your sarup. And that means that, you know, in the larger sense, it's just traveling through the different bodies. Okay, so we're liberated. Now we're fixed in our sarup. So you mentioned chanting in the kirtan. Well, if your mind is actually focused on the holy name and you're fully absorbed in your body, well, you're in your sarup.
Yeah.
You know, but you may not be vivastati, means that you may not be firmly fixed there, and then you fall. But you can easily measure the level of your, you know, liberation. liberation by a sense of detachment from all other things and attractions. That's a very practical means. And that certainly you can feel yourself become, in this verse, or one of the verses you read, and also the verse back in chapter 25, which seems to be referring to, ashu, the word ashu is there, means you quickly become liberated by satam prasanga bhavavi. Somebody comes back to being within the society of devotees and hearing and chanting and developing your bhakti and shraddha in that way. And then in the very next verse he uses this word, vijubir, easy. He uses the word that this is the easiest process of yoga. So he seems to be referring back there. And that liberation literally means to be absolutely firmly fixed in your swarup and free, liberated from fear, liberated from attraction to material things. That's a liberation. And then you're assured of being, going back together.
The reason why I asked, I appreciate that. That was the thread the direction I would have gone also, the definition of mukti. But to give some encouragement to us on our level, because still if I hear that definition, my mind's firmly fixed. Even in kirtan, sometimes you see some Prabhu not firmly fixed in hearing and attentively chanting, etc. They're not participating in the sam, kirtan, the congregational chanting. First of all, we tend to identify liberation when we feel good. I think that's a pretty safe assumption. If I'm feeling ecstatic, then, I must be liberated. But that's an incomplete understanding of it, because it doesn't matter how the mind or the emotions are feeling. If you're engaged in following the instructions of the spiritual master, that is liberation. Now, you may not realize the liberated state that you're in, but you get the benefit because you're pleasing the spiritual master, transparent medium to Krishna. He's accepting the service you're following, you're pleasing, and he's accepting. So you get his mercy, which is the same benefit as if you had realized it. And by staying serious or sincere, as you were saying, I appreciate that. The process works and it grows and it does become easier. But you just have to stay in the process. Follow it to the best of your ability, despite how comfortable or how, agitated or how, upset you are with this or that. And, the process will work. And you are getting the benefit right now, and that will lead to the eventual going back home to Godhead.
Yeah.
That's that point about pure devotional service. Doesn't mean free of all desires. Sometimes we put it on that too lofty definition, which is not Rupa Goswami's definition. You can have desires, but they have to be in the background. You're not acting upon them. You had them, or you still have them, but you're putting your effort, your serious effort into following the instructions of the spiritual master. That's considered pure devotional service. You're trying to please Guru and Krishna. That's the liberated state.
The end of the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, there's that verse where it says, I think it's in the Uddhava Gita, that says, Krishna speaking, and he says, my devotees who have developed some attraction to hearing about me, although they developed that, they still
bothered by the senses.
They're still bothered by the senses, and although wanting to give up sense gratification, they're not fully able to do it, and sometimes they fall into sense gratification. But they feel regretful for what they've done, and Krishna says they should be happy and continue to engage in the process.
Yeah.
And in the purport, it says that, what I heard, it says that this is the beginning of pure devotional service, which is interesting because, as you were saying, it's like, yeah, there's pure devotional service, but there's also the beginning of pure devotional service.
In practice.
In practice. So you could say, because, yeah, so it's not like, black and white or something like that. And then you say like liberation too, because, yeah, you could say there's the liberation, as Dravida Prabhu has mentioned, there's the, fixed liberation. And then there's the, you could say the different
apprenticeship.
Yeah. So, that's there. All right, so does anyone have any other questions or comments? I mean, these weren't questions, these were comments. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
So being liberated means what I understood, like you said, while staying within your body, you are liberated, right? And in my opinion, a person who is living in this material world and have a family and everything, so in my opinion, I think, I don't know if I understood correctly or not, if you don't get affected by any situation or anything, you stay solid like a rock and you can deal with the situation very easily. I think that might be liberation for me, I don't know. You stay strong in any situation. Because if you have a family and all those things, some things happen or anything around you, and sometimes we get shaky very easily. So if when we have this consciousness, it might give us a lot of strength not to be shaky.
Yeah, there's symptoms of liberation Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita, which, like you're saying, it is true to be undisturbed by
any circumstances and anything.
Because that's very important. Because we have to, as I was saying earlier, we have to face that, the ultimate disturbing situation, where we have to leave this body, death, and therefore Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, right, Dehinos men nita dehe komaram vyavanam jara ta deham taraprati tiras tata, the disturbed, the dira, the person, the sober person is not disturbed by death. And also matra sparshas kantirat, the heat of the sun, but all these, the cold of the winter, all these disturbing, they don't become super affected by it. In other words, it's not like an ordinary materialistic person. They're fixed, sober. So
I think you were implying it, although you didn't say it. It's not just being fixed in the duties, but if the motive of the performance of the duties is to please Guru and Krishna, that's called liberation. If you're not doing it for the motive of pleasing Krishna, that's simply being responsible and certainly is purifying. But that will give you more material piety rather than doing it for the motive of pleasing Guru and Krishna will give you spiritual benefits equating to liberation going back to God. Can I ask a question?
yes.
Do you mind saying just a little something? Srila Prabhu in the purports saying that one should not see the bodily judge whether or not the spiritual master is liberated by his bodily symptoms, but instead by his symptoms of activities. Do you mind just saying a little something about that? Because not only does it pertain to the spiritual master, but it pertains to my Prabhus here. When you were talking about association, advanced association, I think well, some of the Prabhus in this room may think that they don't have advanced association.
Yeah.
But if you can elaborate just a touch on what's being stated here, then maybe it helps dispel the illusion that there isn't advanced association sitting right next to you.
Yeah. Well, there's many different ways of going about that, but I mean, sometimes people, they judge Vaishnavas based on many external considerations, which can be extremely mundane. Like in the Nectar of Instruction, Rupa Goswami says that you should bathe in the Ganges no matter what, whether it's, externally it's dirty, they got bubbles or anything like that. It's the Ganges, it's purifying. You should bathe in it. And it says a learned person does that. So it says similarly, and he makes the point that a Vaishnav may be born in a low family, or this or that, or some bodily defects, like whatever, he gives so many, you could say, material defects of a Vaishnava. But he says that you should take their association because they're Vaishnavas and it's purifying. And then Prabhupada goes into the purport and he says that, we shouldn't think, oh, this is a This is an Indian Goswami, and this is an American Goswami. A Goswami is a Goswami, or a devotee is a devotee. But really it really comes down to pride, because if someone has a lot of pride, then they actually won't see, maybe they won't see anybody as advanced as them, so therefore they can't benefit from anybody's association because they think they're the most advanced. Everybody should be trying to associate with them because they're the most advanced. They can't learn from anybody else. So that pride. So we can have more advanced association if we develop that quality of humility, because actually Guru and Krishna can speak through anybody, and they do. But we have to have that humility to see that and that understanding. So my spiritual master, in relation to this, he said that there was one of his sannyasi godbrothers who was performing a severe vrat in Vrindavan, in Kartik time. So this sannyasi godbrother of his, he was chanting many rounds, eating little, sleeping little, like that. So he had very little time. But still, he met with my spiritual master, and they had a discussion about Krishna consciousness. And in that discussion, the idea came up about people wanting more advanced association, and specifically this idea, which is still, it was there in the past and it's here now, it'll probably be in the future. It's a wrong idea. But this idea that, you have to go outside of ISKCON to get more advanced association. This is kind of like the ABCs. You got to go somewhere else to get the real nectar. So this is what they were discussing. And in that discussion, a verse from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu was brought up about, that Rupa Goswami says, he says, you have to associate with like-minded devotees who are more advanced than you. So while they were discussing this, what his sannyasi godbrother was making the point that, yes, me and you, we more or less have the same devotional background. I mean, we joined at the same time, we more or less did the same service, we're both initiating spiritual master, we're both sannyasis, right? So how do we get that more advanced association? And this sannyasi godbrother of my spiritual master, they said, they both said to each other, I see you as my guru and more advanced. And then the other one said, I also see you as my guru and more advanced. So in this way we can get that more advanced association based on humility. And as my spiritual master was saying, humility is, you could say, one of the main qualities of a Vaishnava. By definition, a Vaishnava by definition is humble. So that's how you get that more advanced association. And with that mood, it actually works.
We do become advanced.
Yeah, and you do become, both of you help each other to become advanced, like that, more and more advanced. So that's what was...
more humble in your
More humble, more advanced, more humble.
Yeah, so it works out like that. So if we take advantage of the Vaishnavas that are in our association, and all Vaishnavas, then we could make a lot of advancements. So, yes?
If I could just, since we're almost done, this is practically the last word. Well, it's actually, Kapil is finished speaking now, and Mike is just winding up. And we've come to this point here of describing the easy process of devotional service. And if I could just review a few verses, because the whole thing is contained in these. I'm going to just go back to 3:25-25. That's Satam Prasangan, Mamavirya Samvidam. That's another 3:25-25, right? That's the first beginning of the instructions to his mother. That's Sadhu Sangashtika thing I pulled out. So I'm going to take the translation from the CC that Prabhu gave us, Satam Prasangan Mamavirya Samvidam. The spiritually powerful message of God, and can be properly discussed only in a society of devotees and it is generally greatly pleasing to hear in that association. If one hears from devotees, the way of transcendental experience quickly opens, and gradually one attains firm faith that in due course develops into attraction and devotion. Next verse, 325-26. Thus, oh my God,
Who died?
Mine's not moving.
Yeah, really? A quote from you? Maybe from the association?
Certainly, I'll bring you down.
Okay. Okay, sit down for a second. All right, now it's ready. Okay, just give me a second.
Do you have chapter 25 in that book? Verse 26.
325-26.
Yeah.
Okay,
We got
here it
26.
is. And the next verse says, thus consciously engaged in devotional service in the association of devotees, a person gains distaste for sense gratification, both in this world and the next, by constantly thinking about the activities or pastimes of the Lord. This process of Krishna consciousness is the easiest process of mystic power. It is really Rijagrikan. When one is actually situated on that path of devotional service, he is able to control the mind. And the other one, which probably also won't come. 329, 11, 12.
One sentence. The first line says, thus consciously.
Yeah.
Very important point if we want to get the benefits.
And then in the chapter where he says Kapila explanation of devotional service, he's describing different levels of devotional service, that which are karma, mishra, bhakti, that are mixed with the modes of nature. And then he says, and here's the definition of the pure devotional service, which I can't bring up right now. Madguna shuddhi matrena sa-duhashaye manogati avichinna yutagam kama samudaya. As soon as one hears, this is the symptom or the characteristic of one who's achieved the pure devotion, as soon as he hears Krishna's qualities, and of myself, who I'm speaking, who is situated in everyone's heart, the mind flows toward that sound vibration just like the Ganges flow into the sea. And this is Lakshanam, this is the symptom of pure devotional service, is beyond the modes of nature. And then the next one talks about how he won't even take the four different kinds of liberations without devotional service. So it's all those four verses, they go together. And that's really the essence of his explanation. What's interesting to me is that he's also gone through a whole explanation of pranayama and all this, remember, as he's describing how to meditate in the Lord in the heart. When it comes down to it, this is the one that he says is the most easiest. And that's just what we do. That's the essence of what we're doing right now. Just cultivate the desire to hear and float back to God.
Float back to God. So Jamal, you had last words for this section.
I won't take too long. So just the other day we were talking about, it was mentioned Vaishnavas in the three modes, ignorance, passionate, goodness. And what was being said was that elevated Vaishnavas should avoid the association of Vaishnavas who are not advanced. But then it said that those who are not advanced should associate with those who are advanced. So if one doesn't want to associate with the other, how is that reconciled? That's a question I've had for a while, because I've heard it several times.
Well, I mean, Vaishnavas are kind, so they do extend themselves. I mean, like in Bhagavad Gita, what's that shloka where it says, "Oh, you should not disturb the mind and get attached." And then Prabhupada goes into the purport and says, "Yes, this is an instruction of the Lord, but then, I mean, look at that in the purport. Prabhupada says that the devotees are more merciful than the Lord Himself, and they actually do approach people and sometimes disturb them. But in that, you could say in that business of trying to help, yeah, they do help people. They do disturb some people. But,
just one last word. I think that the key is association. Prabhupada, what does that actually mean? Because Prabhupada talks about how, I heard in a lecture, how, we're going out. The devotees go out and they go into all kinds of places and they meet with people who are in all kinds of modes. But they're not associating with it because they're not taking they're not listening to them. They're trying to give Krishna consciousness. So the more advanced devotees, out of their mercy, they associate in the sense of giving their association to the other. But they're not sitting and listening to all kinds of, neophyte speculations and everything. That's the point. You hear when Prabhupada is giving a lecture and he opens it for questions, sometimes you hear, and a lot of times he'll cut off people. They started, especially in India, they start to, pontificate and, you listen for a long time. So that's the giving association.
There was one lecture and some guy said, "Oh, Prabhupada, Swamiji, what about the cosmic consciousness?" Prabhupada said, "Oh, what is this cosmic consciousness?" And he goes, "That's all." Well, that's a long topic. Maybe we could also discuss during breakfast. Okay, Ventura, Srimad Bhagavatam. Good.
I thought you had already got that.
You know what the deal is? This is coming from the platform of false ego. In Mayapur, or even here, upon returning from Mayapur, I never missed my programs, but I have these 12 hours work days coming out very shortly. So I woke up in time to come along our people, and it's like, I'm not going to have the luxury to take a nap in the day once that gig comes around. And if I can't do that, then where's my service? What's needed?
You're going to be traveling too.
The first one's here, but still the point is, no, I'm staring because I'm ashamed. I wish I could set a better example for you.
Hare Krishna.
You tolerate and I appreciate.
Try to come here to do classes with people.
It's fortunate.
Listening.
I'm listening now.
Never helping me.
Yes. Yeah, I woke up very early today. Like around 4
It's
o'clock.
on my day.
That's how early you had to wake up to get here?
I just showed up.
But then I had to cook.
Oh,
I
you gotta help me there.
How to get here?
So
At 6 o'clock. 6:30. It took me 1 hour from here to get here.
Oh, it's a good
Yeah,
one.
it's very easy to get. Very easy.
I really don't.
I got up at Cass Street, and it's so easy. From there, just 2-minute walk to Arjuna.
Oh,
He's still in the process of
we're in at breakfast now.
Yeah.
That's okay. I brought something to eat. That's okay. And if you need any help, I can help.
Since we don't.
Last time I gave it afternoon, but I thought morning I was better for me.
Yeah, there's, I'm sure, something.
Yes.
Sweet or something. Share. This. We can't just shut it down. Come out.
Yeah, sure. After everyone else.
Thinking about it wasn't sufficient. Because you took to the end too. But then you
And last time I met her name, she was cooking in the kitchen. She also comes from
I have no idea what it means.
I think she comes 5 days a week
First
here.
thing I see there.
Parashakti.
It's 18 reasons why.
Yeah, she was the one who mentioned to me about the classes, if you can come out in the morning.
Gives us attitude.
Next time I'll try to come out. After breakfast, if you need any help.
I think Damodar Kumar
Damodar, yes. If
he
you
has
need any help to
he has some ideas.
Okay.
Would you like to
Yes.
accept this,
How are you doing?
Good.
like to accept this garland and to send to the Prabhu?
Oh, yes, I got a question.
Okay.
Is there any plan or possible
So we
plan?
can
we can
do
do
this.
Okay, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Hare Krishna. I'm worried
I
that.
started reading with them.
You did?
I read on Wednesday, Friday was
Oh, that's good stuff.
Oh, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
That's very good.
And I read. Excuse me, Balarama. Wednesday and Friday, we started teaching the Varshitanya. So we read an hour each time.
Are you using the new one?
Yeah.
It's a lot. I wish I could join you. We went on maybe one of that alone.
Not much to work with.
Yeah, for me, Monday is so far Mondays are good for me. Because I'm off on Monday.
Taking part in that is all offering.
I'm morning
It's
to
about
rush.
that.
Oh, again? Because the last year, like, it's good.
Evening time I have
Formally,
to rush.
BBT
Yeah, so.
approved to take the portal. Or it goes there. The whole box.
No, this
Yes, oh yeah, I can't Bhagavatam, I got it from here.
Yeah, I mean, I heard last night that it was going down, and then I was going to ask you last night if you wanted to hear it. But then, by the time I wanted to catch it before you left, but then, time you left, so I didn't catch it again. But I saw you this morning too, but I didn't want to.
It's
all about me, so.
Concentration.
It's got to happen.
Has to be consistent, right?
Okay.
You didn't even
Some
catch
days,
it. I was
I
just
have a
first.
problem.
Yeah, the whole thing is all lesson that.
So gradually, I'll try to do more. Yeah.
Even though it's a short purpose.
So there are the practices, in daily life, people practicing.
It's got a lot.
Krishna, when I used to live in India, my father, he worked in Mathura.
So even if there's not much time, like 30 minutes, you don't mind?
Have to come from my.
What about, okay, you don't mind? Because I know some people like,
No, like Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada instructions. You should be ready to class anytime.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Vrindavan, Mathura and Vrindavan is not very far, it's very.
Really, no, not
like,
the speaker.
I think I would rather
If
come
you're
there.
doing the service
So
properly.
that time
Yeah.
it was our temple when we came to know about it, I was so happy. That's a wow. We have ISKCON temples.
okay, all right, well,
And we started
next
from
time
almost
if there's some
every
situation where somebody,
And after the prasadam, helped with the cleaning the dishes and the mats also. Gradually. For the last 2 weeks.
You probably did
Is the same thing happen
not really. Yeah, I offered a week earlier, but.
Yeah. I tell you, the devotees in the congregation were so inspired last night. After eating, from my chair to the door, I had likely half a dozen people come up and say,
What is the class?
Oh, he made a comment about Purushottam.
Oh, Purushottam.
encourage those who Srila Prabhupada says specifically this encouragement for those who are not engaged 24 hours, 7 days a week in Pure.
So Prabhupada, I have at home, okay, after he comes and then there is a certain way to check.
Right, I got it.
Yeah,
Last
I'm
week.
doing it.
What do you
but
think of
I
mine?
don't know if I'm doing it in the right way.
Functional and very,
After
You know, it's funny because at first I didn't attend to the design. There was another design. These are made to shine.
It was nice to be here.
And the design.
I just thought
Why did you run?
this is
Well, this is the second
that's
one
why
I
I
got.
woke up.
They're only like
Problem.
$20. I thought it was fair. So this is somewhat basic. You got the elephants, baby elephants.
Wants to be here.
So it's somewhat, you get it.
Yeah, like, because otherwise your money goes here, and you do this, do that, and do thousands of
We got no idea.
I was not from here, I was giving you advance notes.
take down the elephants, smash that and take down the
Protect yourself from
That's
your
why
own
the
thoughts.
lions are here.
Because you
Oh, I had no idea.
protect yourself from your own thoughts.
But
Because
anyway,
your own
the
thoughts
other
is
one,
the most
the other one
thing that harms you.
Well, the old one I have,
Consciousness,
but
it can't go here and there.
exploded.
Right? It stays
That
with
didn't-
Krishna.
But the other one has this design, and it was just called Magic.
Whenever I try that,
But I said, what is that? And I realized there was a disturbing thing, it wasn't like suffering. Yeah, I'll show you the other one, not this one, but in person.
I'm not going to do
It had too much
it.
Like, no, this is suffering.
Nice.
Anyway, you realize how important like this
being experienced.
You see the benefit in,
And it's uplifting, and other it's all the places, yeah, and just the way it lifts you up. But I remember when I went to India one time by way of Romania, I forget the name of the main, Bucharest. Okay. And it was just after the fall of the big dictator there from India.
festival, upcoming festival like the anniversary of
Listen to
and the whole place that had been excellent.
I think 14.
Holy architecture.
Today's the 21st.
21st, yes.
So it's not like a less than 3 weeks.
I realized how important the architecture was.
Yeah.
You read about the Bhagavatam, Dwarka, Mathura,
I'll be around the week.
And of course, in the Vedic conception, the universe is created by the Supreme Being, by Krishna. But basically, the description in the Vedas is that the earth is considered to be at the center of a relatively small structure, and the various planets, sun and moon and so forth, are circling around the earth, and out at some distance there's a series. Please don't do anything more with the microphones, because it's going to make that noise again. So either it works or it doesn't, but let's just leave it. So, going out to a certain distance, there's a series of shells. Actually, it's described there are 7 shells covering the universe, according to the Vedic picture. And in the Vedic literature, it's described that there are many universes existing within the causal ocean, and each one is surrounded by a series of shells like this. And these are practically innumerable. There are various descriptions given. For example, they're compared to bubbles of foam within the ocean. And you can just imagine how many bubbles of foam there are in the ocean. Or they're compared to the mustard seeds in a barrel of mustard seeds, and so on. Well, in other parts of the world, this same conception existed. So, in the ancient Mediterranean area, where the Greek and Roman civilizations and so on existed, people also had practically the same conception of the universe. As far as I'm aware, the idea of many universes floating within a causal ocean was not described outside of India, although maybe people did have that idea, but it just hasn't come down to us so prominently. But the ancient Greeks, for example, also had the idea of a universe which was contained within a shell. The Earth was at the center, and the different planets were moving around the Earth. So that conception was there. Now, in the Vedic literature, there's one basic description of the universe, which in the books we have is presented mainly in the 5th canto. And that describes a number of unique features, such as a universal mountain, which we call Mount Sumeru, and so on. You also find that in very ancient times, people in many parts of the world had this idea of Mount Meru. For example, the Greeks had this idea. They called it Mount Olympus. And by the time we come to the Greek civilization, they had placed it in Greece. a sort of parochial viewpoint. But the Greeks were fond of Greece, so they wanted everything to be there. So their Mount Olympus, though, really corresponds to Mount Meru, because it's a mountain on top of which the gods are dwelling. Zeus and so on lived on top of Olympus. So likewise, on top of Mount Meru, there are the dwelling places of different demigods and so forth. Also, the Scandinavians had the same idea. I once saw a map of the universe according to the ancient Norse, the Vikings and so forth. And there was a central island with a ring-shaped ocean around it, and in the center of that island there was a vast mountain. And on top of that mountain there was what they called Asgard, which is the dwelling place of the gods, with Thor and so on and so forth. So this conception of the universe used to be found all over the world. You can trace it in many different cultures. So that's one conception which was existing in ancient times, but also in ancient times there's existing the conception of the earth as a globe and the planets as moving around the earth in different orbits. So that's also there in Vedic literature. There are books such as the Surya Siddhanta, which describe the earth as a globe, and they describe how the different planets orbit around the earth. And these texts give mathematical details for calculating where the planets are at any given time. This is of interest to astrologers because they do their astrological calculations based on where the planets are within the zodiac. So these scriptures also provide rules for calculating when eclipses of the sun and moon take place. And you can do more sophisticated things. You can calculate when the sun and the moon will be at 90 degrees from one another and different things like this. So the relationship between the fifth canto type description of the universe and these descriptions of the earth as a globe with the planets going around is a whole subject of discussion, which I can also get into. But just to give a short historical summary of what happened, as I was saying, in the ancient world, the Greeks had the same basic idea. Then, after the Greeks came the Romans, who didn't really do much in the way of astronomical investigation. They were mainly interested in politics. And then, of course, the Roman Empire collapsed, and in the Middle Ages, nobody did very much because they all became Christians. And so they weren't actually very much interested in things such as astronomy. But then came the Renaissance, which is very famous, when in Italy and also other parts of Europe, people began to rediscover the writings of the ancient Greeks. Those had been lost in Europe during the Middle Ages, but the Arabs kept them intact, more or less. Not really intact, because probably one book out of